Special ed. I got it made. Some of that old school. We started off with Just to Get a Rep by Gangstar, legendary. Rest in peace to Guru, Gangstar, one half of Gangstar. And Special Ed. Shout out to Special Ed. I actually met Special Ed one time at the Buddha Bar in Manhattan. And it was a club. It was Stretch Armstrong was DJing. But I used to go there because they had a video game. They had a pool area and they had a Street Fighter video game. And a lot of them hip hop heads, they weren't into video games. You know, being a geek wasn't cool in the 90s. So I used to go there and beat the ever living crap out of all the hip hop heads and various, industry people at the Buddha Bar in Manhattan. I even beat Stretch Armstrong, beat the hell out of him in Street Fighter. But I never gambled though, because cats, when they gamble, they get wild. But there used to be a lot of gambling in New York. Pick up street basketball game, video games. People used to gamble, shooting dice, and I don't like to gamble. So that's just not me. But that was the days. I could have made a lot of money though back in 92, 93. I could have got paid in full, because them cats, they used to gamble, and they just weren't good at the games. They weren't as dedicated. But now everybody plays video games. Everybody's a freaking gamer. But back then we were a select few. Anyway, welcome to the Bro Diallo show. Got a lot to get into today, and I got some stuff I want to share with you. But I don't even know why I'm here anymore. Real talk, son. I'm obsolete. Now that y'all got Greta Thunberg, every time I hear it, it's like that Muppet, the Swedish chef Muppet. What's his name? It doesn't matter. Let me get back on topic. This is serious. I'm going to announce my retirement because Greta Thunberg is going to save the world. All of you Pan-African revolutionaries, freedom fighters, radical feminists, black nationalists, revolutionary, guerrillas, communists, socialist, liberals, hell, even you liberals, you PETA, tree-hugging, animal rights activists, let's everybody, Deep Green Resistance, Earth Liberation Front, Animal Liberation Front, Nation of Islam, everybody that's been trying to do anything for anybody at all, go sit your asses down, because Greta Thunberg is here to save the day. So I don't even know. I could just close my notes and just walk away. So y'all have a good day. Our Savior, our Lord and Savior has returned. You would think Greta Thunberg is the second coming of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Anyway, but there's some stuff about that. Shout out to Cory Morningstar, who was doing investigations on this Thunberg phenomenon. Maybe I could share the interview with Cory Morningstar talking about Greta Thunberg. But here's the thing, my problem. And I know y'all call me a hater anyway. I know y'all call me a hater. So, and I'm the Grinch of black nationalism. No. Wait, I'm not the Grinch of black nationalism. What am I the Grinch of? Oh, the Grinch of Pan-Africanism. I got so many titles. Like, special ed. I got titles. But I'm the Grinch of Pan. But this Greta Thunberg thing, it pisses me off for a number of reasons. And just between 2002 and 2013, there were over 900 murders, assassination of climate activists. People who, like Greta Thunberg, were fighting and speaking out and taking a stand for the environment. Over 900 between 2002 and 2013. And the stats for now, up between 2013 and 2019, are still being tallied. They're still piling up the bodies. But I went back to 2002 to say that people have been fighting and dying on the front lines of the climate struggle since the 70s. Really, since the 60s. There was a book that came out called Silent Spring, which was considered the first ever real book of the modern environmental movement. We now find out through investigations that oil companies knew about environmental destruction dating back to the 1930s to 1921, global warming and the climate catastrophe. And let me tell you, all the people behind all of this, almighty whitey, white folks, and a few crumb snatchers, color crumb snatchers, a few black people who got a seat at the table, but it ain't their agenda. They don't own the means of production. They're not even petty bourgeoisie. I call them the pseudo bourgeoisie, but more on that later as well. But you have African people, Native American people, Inuit people, Pacific Island people, sisters and brothers in the Middle East, in the West Indies, Central Latin America, throughout Africa, who have died, young people who have died fighting to preserve the ecosystem. But here come Greta Thunberg, speaking before the European Parliament, speaking before the US Congress, leading millions on marches through all the major metropolises. I mean, goddamn. I mean, I have to go back to Professor William Mackey's grandmother and say the bugger got no, white folks got no shame. But am I hating? Because she says all the right things, right? This is called green imperialism, eco-imperialism. And now history books are going to have to write, if there is any history, if this is not truly the end of history, the extinction of humanity, are going to have to write that white people destroyed the world's ecosystems, but white people also came to save us from themselves. I mean, this is the white savior complex to the 10th degree. To the 10th degree. It is utterly insulting to even me, myself, and I, who's been promoting sustainability, who's been opposing extractive greenhouse gases, extractive industry all my damn life. But here comes a little white girl, and she's the voice and the face and the leader of the youth movement. And I told my son, you better not go downtown for that bull. You've been vegan, you've been green, you've been in this city up until he broke his leg doing eco gardening. Nobody put him before Congress. It is just the height of absurdity. It is the height of absurdity that little Greta Thunberg, whose mother is a celebrity over there, she's some kind of opera singer, but her father is a green activist. They're tied in with Al Gore. They're tied in with Greenpeace. And there's this movement called, or this website called We Don't Have Time. And they're basically trying to commercialize and capitalize the saving of the earth. If the earth must be saved, somebody has to profit from it. Somebody has to manage it, to own the saving of the planet. Somebody has to market it, brand it, trademark it, copyright it. So these goddamn crackers, and I'm sorry, I gotta say it, are now taking over a movement that white people have spent the last century killing all over the world. Training up death squads, burning down palm oil trees, cutting down the Amazonian rainforest, ripping out the guts of Mother Africa to bring out the mineral wealth. Created a global system of capitalism and carbon emission, and went around the world and forced everybody else. Nobody had it. There was no opting out. It was get with capitalism, get with extractive economies, join the capitalist market, or get bombed and do it anyway. And now we got to sit here as a majority African planet as a majority black, brown, blue, yellow, everything but white planet. And they're going to put this little white girl on a platter, and the little white girl's being exploited. She's being pimped and played. She's reading scripts. And Greta Thunberg stands on literally a mountain. Greta Thunberg ain't stubbed her toe in the fight to save the planet. You got African miners being machine gunned down. You got indigenous people living off the grid in the Brazilian rainforest being gunned down. You got sustenance farmers being bulldozed into the ground in India, other parts of Southeast Asia. You got people right now, you got people doing guerrilla warfare in the Niger Delta, trying to upend and destroy the oil industry that is destroying the Niger Delta in Nigeria. And they tried marching, they tried protesting, hell, they even tried prayers and rituals. And now they have to go to the gun. And ain't none of them representatives, none of any of those people have been brought here to tell their story. We got to listen to this white girl tell us about what she believes in her heart, because she ain't been through a damn thing. She ain't seen nothing. But I guess I just don't have faith. She's got all the right words. She's saying all the right things. But something don't smell right. So I went looking. And I found this article by Corey Morningstar called The Manufacturing of Greta Thunberg. And lo and behold, she's a plant. And these white folks are like, we constructed and profited from the destruction of the ecosystem, and now they're trying to maneuver themselves to profit from the saving of the thing they killed. Give your ass hell and charge you rent. The same people that own the nuclear power plant to give your grandma cancer are the same people that own the radiation and chemotherapy manufacturing companies to cure her cancer. And they expect you to celebrate and applaud and pay them for saving them from the very disease they gave to you. That's where we are on a planetary scale. White people say they forced us down the hole and now they want us to follow them out of the hole. But I see y'all out there. Y'all let me know how it turns out. I'm not going for it. And if we got time, I'll play it. But if you have time, the people who belong, there's this We Don't Have Time. There's a website, .org, We Don't Have Time. And it's a whole movement. It's a social media marketing movement, and they want to take over social media. They've got all these tens of thousands of people to sign up. They got these like 4,000 to 5,000 investors for their startup. And what they're going to do is try to collect all the information. They are creating what is now called the climate apartheid. And they're going to use imperialism to go around and tell people you can't cut, you can't dig, you can't develop, you can't manufacture. They just like they force people to reorient their sustainable ecological cultures and societies. They force them to go from a sustainable culture to a for-profit, unsustainable culture. And now they're going to force those same people to go back to a sustainable culture by according to the terms, values, and interests of the West. And again, what I always say, I'm not upset or surprised at what white folks are doing. What I'm upset and surprised about is that we still falling for the goddamn okie doke. So I'll encourage you, if I don't have time to share it with you, I'll post the article somewhere today at me across social media of the manufacturing of Greta Thunberg. And again, I know I'm a hater. I'm a hotep, I'm ashy. You can call me, oh, that little girl just trying to do good. How she's just a little girl trying to, with a Jesus complex, white savior complex. She's just a little girl. I know. But the article even states that she's a puppet, she's your puppet, that her parents are pimping her out and her parents are getting paid in full. And then she came to the United States from Europe on a sailboat because she wants to save the planet. And she doesn't fly in airplanes. And I'm like, damn, that's noble of you, but who got the money and time to hop on a damn sailboat? Who paid for that sailboat and for that crew? And for her father to accompany her? He ain't got to get out here and grind like the rest of us. Who's bankrolling this? Whose man's is this? But she, like I said, she gets up and says all the right things. I hear her talk and I'm like, yep, that's all true. But I don't accept it coming out of your little mouth. I don't accept, hey, it's a fix is in. The fix is in, just like the colonizers always do. What do? What do the colonizers do? They didn't come in and come to your borders with the machine guns. They didn't come with the swords waving. They send in the missionaries. And what did the missionaries do? They didn't even come and say, you're damned to hell. The missionaries came and says, we want to set up a clinic to bring medicine to the sick. We want to set up a little school and teach the children crafts and teach them foreign language. They send in the missionaries, and the missionaries soften the people up for the Marines. That's what they do every blood clot time. They sent someone, a white person in that's soft-spoken and meek and humble, that says all these wonderful things, and they have no weapons. They don't have bodyguards. They just come in very vulnerable and soft, and they went into Africa. They came to the New World. We're just some pilgrims. Hell, let's eat some dumpling and turkeys and some cranberry and just be peaceful. We just want to pray and build a cabin. No biggie. Same thing, they went into Africa. We just want to set up a little school. We just want to sit here and weave baskets and sing hymnals. We're no threat to you. And all the natives all across the world, in India, in Asia, in Africa, the so-called New World, the Pacific Islands, the archipelagos, all over the world, people are like, well, come on in, missionary. Y'all smell funny, y'all look funny, but y'all seem harmless. Come on through. As soon as the missionaries got a foothold in with their kind words and their soft and passive demeanor, they opened the door for the Marines. They send in the missionaries that are followed by the Marines, by the military. That's what I see Greta Thunberg. We want to save the planet. And so she'll come to America. I'm here to save the planet. And then she's going to go to South America. We must save the planet. And she's going to go to Africa. We got to save the planet. They might as well give that girl a little crown of thorns and give her a little donkey to ride into town on instead of coming in on sailboats. And when she goes to all these places, say, we're here to save the planet. Say, good, we've been working to save the planet for the last 45, 50 years. My grandma, my uncles all went to prison, got killed. CIA, MI3, MI5, all these intelligence agencies and multinational corporations and mercenaries and corporate gun crews came here and killed us because we said don't cut down our palm trees. We said don't refine and don't frack our soil. We said no. And they was killing us. But now here's a kindly little white girl that says, we're here to save the planet. And then they're going to come and tell native people, okay, so how are we going to save the planet? Well, population reduction. Boom. Too many people on the planet. We have to centralize all resources around the world. So no individual colonized nations, you can't decide what to cut, what to burn, what to grow. You have to go through a central authority to determine what is, because this is a planetary emergency and they're going to put the whole world under martial law. So who's going to come in right behind Greta Thunberg? We're here to save the planet. And then they're going to put a gun to everybody's head and say, okay, here's the agenda for saving the planet. Follow it or you get your brains blown out. And lo and behold, carbon offsets and carbon credits, all of the things that save the planet seem to generate profit for the West. Well, what do you know? Go to WeDon'tHaveTime.org, Google, in parentheses, The Manufacturing of Greta Thunberg by Cory Morningstar. It's all out there. Let me tell you something. It's just like Mandela. Remember, everybody was mad at, in fact, there was only one person that I noticed publicly said, middle finger to Mandela. It's like this is a fairy tale. Fairy tales ain't real. How a man come out of prison and 2 weeks later he's the president of a country. That don't even happen for white men, let alone an African man in a racist apartheid country. And he said, don't fall for the okie doke. And I remember when Mandela came and marched down the streets of Manhattan, and it was literally a ticker tape parade. And then he defiantly went and stood side by side with Fidel Castro. And he's like, he's doing all the right things. He's saying the right things. He's doing the right things. He's meeting and showing solidarity with the right people. Yeah, we should trust him. As soon as he got official power, soon as he took office, first thing he did was took away the nuke. And some of y'all celebrated, oh yeah, he denuclearized South Africa. South Africa is the first and only nation in the history of existence that is a former nuclear power, that once had nuclear weapons and surrendered its nuclear weapons. The only nuke on that Africa. So he gave up the nuke, and then he went in and got in with the World Bank and the IMF and imposed structural adjustment programs, and it all went downhill from there. He sold out. But it was a beautiful, beautiful sellout. It was something that made our hearts warm. Mandela. And we took off our African medallions and our ANC medallions and said, well, job well done. And now Africa continues to burn. South Africa continues to burn. So here we are again. It's a wonderful story. A young lady that was just so in love with the environment. And she went out and did a lonely solo person protest. You mean to tell me we've had 1 million people marches, 1 million people protesting for climate change, and to no avail. But here comes this one little girl. And then the Twitter account, you can go follow this Twitter account, We Don't Have Time, or this first organization that posted this woman's lonely solo one-woman protest, one girl protest against the parliament of her country. So it sounds good. But lo and behold, if I'm still on the air, if we're still breathing air, forget about me being on the air because of Western industrial capitalism. If I'm still on the air, I'll let y'all know. Falling for the okie doke. Right now. Zimbabwe. We're starting to see evidence of climate apartheid. That's what they're calling it now. The nations that contributed, Africa has only contributed, of all greenhouse gas emissions, Africa has only contributed about 3% to global emissions. One individual in the United States living a standard life in the United States emits enough carbon, consumes enough resources that could feed, house, and clothe up to 25 African people. 1 to 25. But Africa stands to suffer the most and is already suffering the most. In Mozambique, the typhoon season or monsoon, I think they have typhoons in Asia. I don't know the term now. Bad, heavy rainstorms. The monsoon, I believe. They have typhoons in Asia. But anyway, Zimbabwe, capital city Harare, has a population of 4.5 million people, and their water sanitation system has been shut down because of their water levels due to a drought. They've gotten 25% less rain than average. And so their water systems has shut down. And so they have shut down water to 4.5 million people. And they came and did some work on my condo a few weeks ago, and they had to shut off the water to the whole building. This is a unit of 6 people, and they called us ahead of time and was like, "Oh, we're going to have the water off for about 5 hours." Do you know how inconvenient that was? I mean, I just want you to be able to relate to having the water off for 4.5 million people. for weeks. People can't wash their clothes. This woman has a home with 4 children, and the children can't use the bathroom, can't prepare food. There are these long lines at these wells that are not sanitary. And they say the majority of the lack of water is due to climate change and drought-driven climate change, or climate change-driven drought. But another large segment of the loss of water is to the antiquated infrastructure. Mugabe, who the black nationalists in America love Mugabe. Mugabe was a celebrity. In the early 2000s, everybody loved Mugabe because Mugabe was talking real slick to Tony Blair, talking reckless to George Bush. And he was talking big game. But at the same time he was talking, he wasn't walking, he wasn't working. So you got a mega city of 4.5 million people, and you don't modernize and invest in the infrastructure. You don't update the water system. You don't anticipate. You don't hire the proper engineers and meteorologists. You don't bring in the experts to help you anticipate and compensate. You don't have good trade relations with surrounding nations. You don't have proper diplomacy. You're not a good statesman. You do not respect and properly conduct the affairs on behalf of the people and the state. Mugabe, and I said all the time, Mugabe was a good revolutionary. He was a horrible president, a horrible statesman. Every problem that the people of Zimbabwe are suffering from right now could have been averted. But these damn black leaders, these corrupt black leaders, these egocentric, demagogic black leaders, and in 2000, whenever I speak about Zimbabwe, people are like, I support Mugabe. And I'm like, shouldn't you say you support the people of Zimbabwe? What do you mean you support the Mugabe? I even had to crosshairs with the late, great Professor William Mackey. Because in his lectures, he was breaking down the injustices and the Zimbabwean revolution and anti-colonial struggle. And he kept saying, yeah, and Mugabe. And I'm saying, it just doesn't make sense to me that you keep referencing Mugabe as opposed to Zimbabwe. He's not that country, and that country ain't him. And everybody was celebrating Mugabe because Mugabe took back the land from the white folks. And Mugabe announced, I'm taking back the land. He said in 2003, I'm going to exportate all of the land and take all the land from the white landowners and give it back to the African people. And everybody, including myself, was like, yeah. Well, everybody was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, hooray. But I had a question. Mugabe took power in what, 87? It took this man 26 years to figure out that the white folks shouldn't have the land, the colonizers should not have the land. What was he doing in that first 27 years before he took the land? I'll tell you, he was amassing over $1 billion in personal wealth selling out Zimbabwe. And when he had stole all he could steal, him and his wife, who's still alive, stole all he could steal from Zimbabwe, him and his wife going on $1 million shopping sprees in Europe, of all places, buying expensive cars and taking them back to Zimbabwe, and you can't even drive them because Mugabe didn't properly invest in the infrastructure, too busy stealing. And when his own people came to him and said, listen, we about to throw your ass over. The same people that fought side by side with Mugabe to overthrow Ian Smith and overthrow the Rhodesian colonizers, those same damn people went to Mugabe and said, we about to kick your ass out of here. And so Mugabe was like, damn, I need to play. And that's when he announced, I'm taking the land from the white man and I'm giving it back to my people. And Tony Blair can kiss my rump. And everybody was like, oh yeah, this is the Mugabe from back in the day. This is the Mugabe that broke bread with Kwame Nkrumah. So they thought Mugabe had finally got back on track. But then he thoroughly mismanaged the land reclamation. to the point that anytime, like when the African, South African economic freedom fighter says, listen, we're going to reclaim the land, people are like, whoa there. Because the first thing everybody thought was like, oh my God, but what happened in Zimbabwe? I mean, Mugabe gave land reclamation a bad name. But people loved him because he talked slick to white folks. And he promised to purge Zimbabwe of all homosexuals and homosexuality. So the black nationalists, black straight pride, Dr. Umar's and irritated genius, they loved that. They just ate that up. While he was raping the country, he was going to rescue them from the European sexuality. I mean, we fall for it every time. But now, our brothers and sisters in Zimbabwe have no water, 4.5. So, cholera and all kind of other waterborne diseases are on their way, typhus. We know they have about 14 to 18 hour long daily blackouts there where the electrical grid is rotting away. But a major factor in the water, which I didn't mention, is theft and governmental corruption. Because water is so scarce, the value of water has gone up. And so now you have different ministries and even individuals hoarding water and stealing water. It's more precious than gold. So this is the situation. This is why I don't go for it. I don't care if you're black and you got all this wonderful black nationalist rhetoric. What is your ground, sound, fundamental agenda, plan? What is your guiding ideology? And how do you intend to implement? What is your platform and what is your policy and agenda? We going off a reg, so the climate apartheid is upon us, but Greta Thunberg is going to save us all. So just hold on for one more day. It's just kind of annoying. What's some good news? Do we have any good? Oh, we do have good news. Before I go into our topic for the day, I gotta do this, y'all, cause it's a lot bad in the world. But when something good happens, when the Lord sends you, when the Lord shuts the door, what they say, Lord open the window. When the Lord closed the window, the Lord open the toilet seat. You can jump in the toilet. The Lord will always provide a way. And so the Spirit is working in the heart of Nancy Pelosi. And the good Nancy Pelosi has announced just 24 hours ago that she will begin an impeachment inquiry against President Donald J. Trump. Yes! An impeachment inquiry against the corrupt, demonic forces of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. What are you doing? What are you doing? Thank you, Pelosi. That's all. Lift Pelosi up. Come on, y'all. We got to lift her up. Put the prayers behind Pelosi. Put your prayers behind Pelosi. All right, cut. I can't be in here. The Spirit. Now we're going to invite the Spirit to leave. Now. Whew, Lordy. Yes. An impeachment inquiry has been opened against the president, Nancy Pelosi, whose most famous quote ever, after taking the White House, after announcing that impeachment is off the table for George W. Bush, there were rumblings before George Bush became Michelle Obama's boo thing, before George W. Bush became Michelle Obama's sidecracker. He was the tyrannical, genocidal man who lied us into multiple wars, who provoked and started a war that has claimed the lives of millions of people. And there was cause for his impeachment. And when the Democrats retook the House of Representatives, had a new majority in the House, the Congress, there were people saying we should impeach George Bush for lying us into multiple wars and for doing the cover-up, the 9/11 cover-up with the 9/11 commission. His mismanagement of 9/11 and lying us into multiple wars. Other modes of corruption related to his Arbusto oil company said we should impeach. Now that the Democrats have taken over the House of Representatives, we should move to impeach George Bush. And Nancy Pelosi walked in before the world and said, impeachment is off the table. And so everyone thought to themselves, now that we have another Republican who got in without the majority of the vote, on a hoot and scoot, on a scheme and a dream, she went down that same path of saying that impeachment is off the table. Yes, she did, y'all. But for some reason, on some day, for some reason, the Lord put it on her heart to go ahead and change her course. And now today, oh God, he's back. The spirit is back, y'all. Oh, stop it. Cut. I mean, she said that she will open an inquiry. She will think about it. So, there you have it. Some good news. And I got a lot to say about that, but I ain't got time to say it. Now, maybe we could talk. Well, I guess I got to say it. Basically, Trump is a crook. Trump deserves to be impeached. But don't listen to me, because I think that Obama should be impeached. I think Obama is an international war criminal. I think that Bill Clinton's an international war criminal. I don't discriminate. I hate all fascists, even the kindly, well-spoken, articulate fascists. You know, even the fascists that are married to beautiful black sisters as opposed to married to whores like Melania, whore Melania. And I'm not down on whores, but I'm down on hypocritical Christian right-wing whores. I'm down on an immigrant who works with an administration that is literally committing daily atrocities against immigrants. So she's a bad whore in the worst sense of the word. That hoe ain't loyal. Anyway, but I continue to digress. And shout out to everybody that continues to share all of those sexy, vomit-inducing pictures of Melania. Creepy. But all of them with Melania all broke out. And the reason I like that people keep sharing those pictures is because I know it bothers the hypocritical Christian right wing that for years called Michelle Obama transsexual, that said Michelle Obama was too masculine, that said Michelle Obama did not properly represent and was disgracing the White House for no other reason than they were racist. So now you got a first lady that you can celebrate. So, you know, I just don't have the stomach to interact with those images. I just don't want to share them. They're gross. But for all of you, showing every day for you, if you got that kind of stomach for that, if you have the Constitution for that, then I encourage you and I appreciate you showing Melania, the President Melania, all broke heart, skin out, Melania skin out, First Lady skin out. All of you, thank you for sharing that. Someone just shared one of the pictures with her in a cockpit. Nipples just jabbing you in the eye. So yeah, shout out to all the people who keep the porn alive, keep Melania porn alive, keep Melania porn circulating on the internet. Please do, cause she ain't loyal. I mean, she's an immigrant. She should rep for immigrants. She's a whore. She should rep for whores. But she's taking the side of the puritanical right-wing evangelical Republican Christians. So drag her. What's that say? Drag her. And by extension, Trump. Anyway, Trump. The Ukraine. I don't really have time to get. I'll try to go as fast as possible. Basically, what's his name? Hunter Biden. Biden got a meth head son. Biden got who's the black sheep of his family, who goes all over the world, China, the Caribbean. He goes all over the world to get money off his father's name. He's a rat. He's a scum of the earth. But many of these politicians have that. Remember, Hillary Clinton's brother was an old cokehead. So a lot of these politicians, siblings, heaven forbid if my brother or my sister, one of my brothers and sisters runs for office, they can pull me out like, oh, they got a crazy militant sibling. Says hateful things. Calling us good white folks crackers and all out our names. And tearing down the angelic Greta Thunberg. So, whenever you run for office, they always do these deep penetrations and try to find out everything you can. So Biden got a crappy son. Even Obama was aware of Biden's racism, but he was also aware of Biden's methy son. He's got a meth head son, cokehead, meth head, crackhead son that goes around making money, saying, hey, and trying to carry influence. But Obama's people looked into it and said, listen, this makes us vulnerable, but there's no there. He hasn't really committed anything that could be traced back to Biden or that could inconvenience Biden. Plus, Biden had a triumphant son, a soldier son, strong-jawed, all-American Aryan son who died of brain cancer because he was over there inhaling the chemicals, depleted uranium and other alpha particles that the U.S. was using against people in the Middle East. So he went over and so he was a victim of blowback. That's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, he was on the board of some company in Iran that was under the investigation of the Attorney General equivalent of the Ukraine. If I said Iran, Ukraine. So that investigator who was investigating the company, he said, now, if you know anything about boards of companies, if you know anything about international, multinational corporations, if you're sitting on a board and your company's investigated, not even implicated in any crime, simply under the investigation, you are not going to jail. How many board members, corporations collapsed the whole global economy, and how many board members went to jail? Board members are insulated from jail. That's why they call it an LLC, limited liability corporation. Your liability is very limited. Your accountability. They'll fine. Who's that family that got all white folks strung out on opioids? If y'all want to celebrate some. No, let me not say that. Let me not say that. I'll go up to the line. I'll dance at the line. I'll touch the line, but I'm not going to cross the line. I got haters out there listening. Snitches. I got some Takashis listening to me, some 6ix9ers. So I certain things I can't say. I'm thinking it. And if you with me, if you're on that vibrational frequency, you're thinking it too. But there's a whole family that strung all white folks out on opioids. And none of the board members of that pharmaceutical corporations, none of the owners, none of the investors, ain't nobody going to jail. They just pay a fine. So anyway, what's his name? Hunter Biden. What a crappy name. I mean, I wouldn't vote. Just you name your son Hunter. What a douchebag. Biden, your sons, what a douchebaggy family. Anyway, Hunter Biden had gotten into some trouble overseas. And now since Biden is the front runner, and let me tell y'all something, Biden is not the front runner. That is a lie conceived by the Washington Post and other corporate media that don't want the less regressive, more progressive Democrats to get a headway. So they keep getting these trumped up stats saying that Biden is the front runner. But Trump is an idiot. And so Trump, being an idiot, he believes what he sees on the television. So Fox News, he said, well, Biden is the front runner. Biden is the guy more likely than not going to have to face in the general election. So let me go and try to bang on Biden, which is the same thing he was accused of doing in the first election, colluding with foreign nations to harm his political opponent. That was the whole thing. So he gets on the phone with the president of Ukraine. If you know anything about the Ukraine, I'll just say this. I don't have time to give you the backstory. Ukraine is a neo-Nazi nation that is a client state of the United States. Ukraine is wholly and fully dependent on the patronage of the United States economy and the U.S. military for its existence. And now I can get into that, but it's Ukraine. Who cares? But Ukraine is a client state, meaning that the president, the legislature, the military of the Ukraine makes no moves, has no capacity to do anything without the pre-approval of the United States president, the United States intelligence agencies, and the United States Pentagon. It is a client state. Ukraine is not a sovereign state. And that's why Russia is like, you make one false move and I'm going to bomb your ass off the map because I know you're nothing but an agent for American interests. That's why Ukraine and Russia, even though they used to be part of the Soviet Union together, are now hate each other. Because Vladimir understands you used to be my puppet, my client state, and the U.S. snatched that puppet away. And so that means Donald Trump has a ton of influence, has a great amount of influence and sway over the Ukrainians, the governing bodies, the governing institutions of Ukraine. He has a lot of influence over. But he's an idiot, so he doesn't know how to speak in diplomatic terms. He doesn't know how to engage in espionage, because it takes a certain level of cunning and intelligence to engage in espionage. So Trump could have got everything he wanted without getting himself impeached. But he's an idiot, and he's very blunt. Not because he's real or honest, he's a pathological liar, but he doesn't have any finesse. He's a brute. So anyway, Trump goes to the Ukraine and says, listen, I want you to go at Biden. I want you to go at Hunter Biden's neck. I want you to basically harm Hunter Biden in order to weaken or to expose the patronage and expose the nepotism, even though Trump is the king of nepotism. All of his little ugly, inbred ass looking kids. Because you know Trump is a eugenicist. He believes in, he's like the royal family. He likes to keep his gene pool very pure, i.e. keep your gene pool shallow. I wouldn't be surprised if him and what's his name, Melania, were cousins of some sort. That's what he believes, that you can breed humans and have good breeding stock. So anyway, I digress. That's a whole nother separate thing. I've already talked about Trump's eugenicism. You see, look at Trump's DNA. You know he comes from some good stock. Who wouldn't want some of that semen? Melania. Anyway, where was I? I'm trying to get that vision of Trump and Melania and Trump's semen out of my head. I do this for the people. Anyway, Trump goes to Ukraine and says, yo, I want you to go at Hunter Biden, in order to hurt Joe Biden. And Ukraine was basically like, that we've been there, done that. There was really nothing we found. And it's like, well, didn't the prosecutor who was investigating the company that Hunter Biden was on the board of, wasn't he fired? And didn't Joe Biden encourage you to fire him? It's like, well, actually, the firing of that attorney and that entire administration was considered a corrupt, disfavorable administration. So it wasn't just that individual. It was a whole presidential administration that people wanted fired. And actually, it was an international effort. The UK, France, and Germany, the UN, everybody was calling for the resignation of that entire administration, including, so it wasn't about Biden coming here saying, get rid of that one guy. So, you can probably manipulate it to say that. And so then Trump's like, listen, y'all not working with me. Y'all do to get some arms. Y'all do to get some food aid and some financial loans. Listen, there's a lot that's coming from us to you. And that y'all asking all this stuff of my country to give to you. And I ask you for a simple favor. Go at Joe Biden's neck. And y'all won't go at his neck for me. What's up, man? I can't get no love after all I done did for you, like an abusive boyfriend. After all I done for you, you can't do this for me? That's basically what Trump did. So Trump used international aid, basically used public taxpayer resources for his own personal gain, to go after his own personal enemies, which is a big no, no, no. They want me to not commit international crimes, and I said no, no, no. And so they got him. And then Giuliani, first Trump said I didn't do it. And Trump said it never happened with his little hands, little tiny hands, little tiny pink hands and orange face. It never happened. I never did. I don't know what you're talking about. And then Trump said it never happened. Said, yes, it did happen, but I had nothing to do with it. I had nothing to do with it. And he was like, yeah, I had something to do with it, but it wasn't what you said it was. Yeah, it was what you said it was. I did it. Let's move on. Fake news. Deep state. So they got him. Now, I hate to say this because I'm not a fan of Obama. I'm so anti-Obama. People have called me a Russian bot. I just got called a Russian bot the other day because of my criticisms of the Democratic Party. People think if you're black and you're anti-Democrat, then you're a Russian bot. That's logical. But anyway. Trump, I hate to say this, but if Obama had done if Obama did for one day the stuff that Trump has been doing for over 2 years, Obama would be in prison. Obama would be in a federal prison. Hell, he'd be locked up. Michelle would be locked up, and his daughters would be wearing ankle bracelets, those ankle monitoring bracelets at Harvard. It wouldn't have flew. And I would have agreed with that too. Lock up Barack, lock up Michelle, and put ankle bracelets on the twins. I don't care. They're not twins, are they? No, Bush had the twins. Oh, they all, these fascists. I get them mixed up. But that's where we're neither here nor there. It's just because Obama got away with crimes, everybody should get away. No. So anyway, Trump, in fact, there was impeachable. He had committed impeachable offenses according to the Mueller report. Obstruction of justice. He did a crime. He did many crimes. And he violated the Monuments Clause. He told federal agents to literally take land away from U.S. citizens. And he encouraged his underlings to commit crimes. And ahead of committing those crimes, he said, I will give you a pardon if someone arrests you. Now, that is RICO. That is racketeering. That is conspiracy to commit a crime. And also conspiring to escape the consequences of a crime. That statement alone, that nobody denies, including him, denies that he made, impeachable offense. And I know some of y'all are like, it's just Democrats and the Republicans are the same. It is intellectually lazy to say that the Democrats and the Republicans are the same, because they are not. That I'm not saying they're good. Saying the Democrats and the Republicans are the same, that's like saying diabetes and cancer is the same. They're both diseases, they're the same. So you can find some similarities between cancer and diabetes, does not make them the same, which require different remedies and responses. So the Democrats are a problem. I'm not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. Hell, I'm not even a patriotic American. But that doesn't mean that I don't have to be emotional about it. I can look at the political landscape in the United States and look at it from a rational point of view. I can apply critical thinking, and I can determine how to engage the U.S. political process in a way that best speaks to my agenda and my people's interest. So they are not the same. And even if that was the case, if you say the Democrats and the Republicans are the same, and you think that's a bad thing that they're the same, when you see them engaged in large, high-stakes conflicts, such as an impeachment inquiry, then you should applaud that. Like, okay, they're the same, but now they're fighting, so maybe they will diverge. Maybe that sameness will be reduced. So even if you are intellectually lazy enough to believe that they're the same, you should still celebrate this. I am very happy that there's an impeachment inquiry. I am very happy to see my enemies fight each other, destroy each other, arrest, investigate, expose each other. It is just an intelligent thing. You think that the white oppressors are the only people who can engage in or even celebrate divide and conquer? But I digress. Y'all ain't thinking on that level. I think it's good that the impeachment inquiry, I hope it's not limited in scope. I hope but what that will do is give the Democrats subpoena power and more authority to penetrate into Trump's affairs and Trump's administration and call more people on the carpet. Maybe they'll get brave. But I implore you, even if you're anti-politics, even which is stupid, but even if you're stupid, I can't be calling people stupid. Everybody listening to my show is like, brother, you can't talk to people like that. I apologize. Even if you are disinterested, how about that? Even if you are not into politics, even if you hate the Democrats, which you are fully just, I don't encourage anyone to love the Democrats. Even if you're a black Republican, for the health of democracy, even if you are a patriotic Uncle Tom Sambo, boot-licking, handkerchief head Negro, I'm sorry, no name calling here. This is me trying to appeal to the community. Even if you're a black Republican, handkerchief head, Uncle Tom, coon ass up, I'm sorry. If you're a black conservative, handkerchief, if you're a black conservative, excuse me, if you're a black conservative, you should welcome this inquiry. Because if nothing else, it will absolve your Lord and Savior, Donald J. Trump. So even if you Kanye West, you should welcome this. You should encourage it. And if you're truly a patriotic, redneck, conservative, black American Republican, and you truly love the Constitution, then you should encourage, and if he's guilty, then let justice be done, right? Didn't nobody force him to commit high crimes and misdemeanors. But anyway, we will be following this. I think it's too little too late, but it's still going to play out good, no matter where you fall. Thy will be done. Nancy Pelosi, Jesus Christ has put it on her heart. So I love when I get an opportunity to allow the Spirit to come in and we get some Holy Ghost and we get some good news. We don't get enough good news here. Good things is happening for all. Even if the Democrats and Republicans bang on each other, they ain't got time to bang on us while they're busy banging on each other. Anyway, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. It is 8:05 in the AM Central Standard Time. You can find Q4 Radio at iTunes, the TuneIn app, iTunes Radio, the TuneIn app, q4.org, live and direct. Bro Diallo Show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, when the Lord willing and the creek don't rise. There was some West Indian guy used to say that all. The Lord is winning and the creek don't rise. I'll be here. So thank you for listening. If you can find it in your heart, if whatever ancestors or deities put it on your heart to help support the Bro Diallo Show. There are many ways to support. You can become a Patreon to help sustain us on the air. You can make a one-time donation via the website, diallokenyatta.com, or you can even now, just recently, this is like my third time using this, you can even make a donation via Super Chat on the YouTube feed. So there are many ways to support the Bro Diallo Show, and I ask that you do so that I can continue to come here and be the player hater that I am. The hater. Or the Russian bot, so that I can come here to do that's what some guy, Dwight, called me, a Russian bot. I can come here and do the will of Comrade Vladimir Putin, to be the puppet of whatever, man. I get called all kinds of things. I'm not even disputing. I am what you say I am. Who has a song? I am whatever you say I am. Is that Kanye? Whatever, man. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the topic at hand. I am a little distressed. Today's show is called AfroFeudalism and Black Serfdom. And before we can talk about AfroFeudalism, we have to talk about what feudalism is. Feudalism was a system that came after the fall of the Roman Empire. It is sandwiched between the fall of the classical age of the Roman Empire and the Renaissance, the European Renaissance. That time between that over 1,000 what is it, like 300 to 600 years span, depending on whose timeline you're looking. It's called the so-called Middle Ages, Dark Ages, or the feudal era. And in that feudal era, there was certain economic, social class, hierarchical structures set up. And officially, the feudal age lasts between the year 1000 AD to 1300 AD. But it was all the way up to the 1970s and 1960s. And in fact, I think Scotland abolished feudalism in what was it, 2002. So really, feudalism went from the year 1000 up to the year 2000 throughout Europe, and they talk about slavery. But anyway, feudalism was a system where you had a bunch of what they call noblemen, princes, local governors, but it was a strict hierarchy. And you had a king, a ruler over all, a centralized king, and then king would give patronage and give land, responsibility, titles, and duties to various underlings. But the king, the noblemen of the noble houses, their families, they made up about 1% of the population. Well over 90% of the population were serfs or peasants. The serfs and the peasants had no power. And the one thing about it that they say distinguishes it from now to then is that if you were born a serf, you were going to die a serf. There was absolutely no opportunity for you to elevate in life, no matter how smart you were, no matter how hard you worked, no matter how smart you were with your money, how well you invested, and all the stuff they tell poor people that they can do today to elevate, to become the next Jay-Z, to become the next Obama. There was absolutely no chance of that in the medieval or feudal system. Everyone was locked into their class. So if the king was born a king, no matter how corrupt he was, no matter how incompetent he was, no matter how cowardly he was in the face of the nation's enemies. Well, it wasn't really a nation. They didn't really have nations then. They had fiefdoms, territories. But you get my drift. No matter how incompetent, no matter how corrupt, no matter what they did to come or stay in power, once they were there in perpetuity. Like Beyonce says, like Beyonce likes to dress up like European monarchs and tell black folks, bow down, bitches. Beyonce said, you know, the moves I'm making, my children's children, great-grandchildren will be set for life. So she's obviously internalized this whole thing that, you know, bloodline. And even poor working class black people talk about their legacy and bloodline. And by bloodline and legacy, they mean fiat currency. They don't mean clean air. You know, they don't mean fertile soil. The things that we really need for life. No, they mean the stuff that white folks are in printing. In their printing presses. That fiat worthless paper. But I digress. Now, what's disturbing me now is there were wars fought against this system because the peasants said, we make up the majority and we do all the work. We do all the hard labor. While these rich people sit up on high, they control and own everything and they do next to nothing. And they dictate everything. And it was to the point where if the feudal lord said, I'm a Catholic, then you were a Catholic. You didn't have no choice. If the feudal lord says, I'm a Protestant, then you had to go Protestant. And if your feudal lord was a Calvinist or a Shaker or an Anabaptist, whatever your feudal lord said, if your feudal lord said, I despise the color green, no one in the kingdom better be found wearing no damn green. If the feudal lord stood up and said, all of the deer belong to me, you couldn't hunt deer. You'd have to hunt squirrels and rabbits. You go back and look at the old Robin Hood movies, and a lot of the peasants were on the chopping block because they killed a deer to feed their families. And though all the king had decreed all the deer in the land belonged to me. Which is crazy, right? That sounds crazy. But the peasants of that era and the serfs of that era for over 1,000 years were like, this is our lot in life. And they believed in this thing called the divine right of kings. Y'all think prosperity ministry started in the musty Baptist churches in the South? No. They said it's divine right of kings, that if God loved you, God will bless you with a high birth. And God will bless you with all the gold and rubies and power. But if you were born a serf, then that is your penance. That is what God wants of you. And you should be a dutiful, humble serf. And the serf, when they weren't tilling the soil, when they weren't doing all of the manual, hard, necessary labor of human existence and to build society, they would be gossip about. They would talk about the fashions of the noblemen. They talk about which of the king's mistresses which of his consorts was the most attractive. And they would talk about the various hairstyles of Marie Antoinette. And they would talk about how the various banquets, and they would gossip about the king's various banquets when other noblemen would come from other parts of the Europe, and how many horses, and look at the carriage, and the craftsmanship of the carriage. They would just gossip and talk and fantasize about the riches. And then they would come up with stories where some prince, like Cinderella, a prince would descend from the castle and take a common woman as his princess. Sound familiar? And if there was a serf, or if there was a peasant to say, this ain't right, oh, why are you hating? What are you? You crazy? You got to be realistic. What are you going to do? Because there was three classes, really. There was the elites, the nobles, the monarchs, and their lackeys. There were the peasants. But between the peasants and the monarchs were the knights, were the armed mercenaries who will kill your ass if you stepped out of line. If you tried to get outside of your class structure, if you tried to disrupt the class hierarchy, they would kill you. They would stab. They'd kill you if you didn't, though. If you were just coming back from the market with some Skittles to walk back to your hut, they'd just kill you for the hell of it. They would extort from the people. Because the knights were literally hired thugs. And many knights were the nephews and the second, third sons of noblemen. And so in that era, everything went to the firstborn son. So if you were the second, third, fourth, fifth son, because people didn't live very long, so women were considered breeding stock, the noble women. That's why when you call a woman a queen, you're actually insulting her, because queens had no real power. Queens were literally breeding stock for royal men. So anyway, the queens, where was I? Sorry, got distracted for a second. But the noblemen and the queens, they set up on high. And the knights, the second, third, fourth, the sons and the nephews and the people who were not in position to inherit the lands of the nobleman, of the lord, of the king, they would become knights, or they would pay for their knighthood. And literally, to become a knight was literally given a license to rob and pillage the serfs. You could go out and extract wealth as long as you didn't harm the serfs that did the work on the land. A lot of times, same thing in the United States. But anyway, this was a system that lasted in Europe for centuries. That lasted into the modern era, even into the industrial era. You had serfs who were bound to feudal lords. And it still operates that way in the minds of many Western Europeans and Eastern and Central Europe. The feudal system, but the feudal system eventually became overthrown by a convergence of many things, such as one of the main things was a major plague, the Black Plague, the Black Death, descended on Europe, which disrupted everything because that was what they call the Great Equalizer. I'm sorry, I left out one more. Damn, how I do this? Above the knights, but below the noblemen was the clergy. So you had the noblemen, the clergy, the knights, the popo, and then all the rest of the people. And that was the feudal system and the serfs. And what really one of the key identifiers of the serf is that they accepted their position. Now, you had the Black Death, and as a result of the Black Death also came as a result of industrialization because people were concentrating. This system was only able to thrive when 99% of people were engaged in agriculture or industries that supported agriculture. So even if you didn't work the land, you were making tools to work the land, or you were making clothing for the farmers, or other you were tending to livestock and other things. You were carting farm goods into and out of the cities and castles. So 90% of the people are either directly or adjacently engaged in agriculture and feudalism. But as industry came, you needed fewer people to work the land, and you needed more people to work in factories. So as opposed to a family working a land in isolation, you had people coming to factories where instead of your neighbor being 60 acres away from you, your neighbor was sitting right next to you at the loom, working the loom. And so then when the neighbor complained, man, this is some bull, how we doing all this grinding and this hard work, while the neighbor was like, you know what? I thought that too. So people started their rumblings and tumblings. So you had a lot of people die, and people saw for the first time the clergy and the royal houses, they were dying, and they saw that the kings, many of the kings were nothing but mortal men. They were not divine men. They didn't have the divine sanction of God because they were dying right next to the peasants. Whole royal families were wiped out. And a lot of the kings they saw were very cowards, and they would eat like in places like in Italy and Sloan. If one person in a family got the plague, they would board up the house with your mama, your wife. If one child or one elder in the family got sick, they would board up the entire damn family in the house, and everybody would die and starve to death. They wouldn't let them come out of their own house, and they sat there and died. Everybody had to die. I mean, it was wild. And the Pope at that time, one of the popes went in and sealed himself into a castle and wouldn't allow anyone to come or go. And he survived. That's how he survived the plague. But it just disrupted the hierarchies, and everybody was just running scared. And on top of that, you had the Industrial Revolution, which allowed a lot of peasants or forced a lot of peasants to leave the land because there was better technology. You could grow more food with less people using different techniques and technologies. And then the people started to amass where people were more isolated and only interacted with relatives and families. They started interacting with more and more people, more and more complaints. So then you had the anti-monarchical wars and the democratic reforms and this and that. And you had all this turmoil that upended and then you had the Renaissance. So the system eventually, because of a convergence of many different historical, environmental, technological factors, was upended. And we thought that feudalism was gone forever. Now, Africa never had a system of feudalism. Africa didn't have a system of absolute monarchs. That was a white thing. So why am I talking about any of this history or this reality? Because now I'm seeing, with the advent of the mega rich and this black billionaire caste, that black people, that African people, are comfortably and enthusiastically running into a feudal condition. Things like remember the LeBron James school? Y'all were talking about it and just all up. And LeBron James came and opened a public school for poor people in Cleveland. And then that brother that paid off the tuition for all the students at Morehouse. And then he came back and said he's going to pay off the tuition of the family members, of the parents of the students. And now there was another coalition of businesswomen who've paid off the tuition. And so we've got these and then there was some mega rich person that came. They talk about Serena Williams goes to Africa and opens up schools and clinics. So we have these mega rich black people engaged in these benevolent acts of charity, and the black masses are just celebrating this. Now, I don't like this in one bit. And here's why. That is a feudal condition. Now, how do rich people get rich? Rich people get rich under capitalism by extracting the means of production and the labor surplus from the masses of the people. And there were literally white people fought wars to say, listen, we're sick of the king taking our labor and amassing all the wealth for himself, and then he as an individual gets to determine how that is distributed. The king as an individual gets to decide whether the money was going to go to warfare, whether the money was going to go to research, whether the money would go to the church, whether the money would trickle down to the peasants. They said no one man or no small group of people should be able to make that decision. And the white folks said, well, the Greeks and the Romans had democracy. Maybe we should have a democracy. And instead of Jay-Z, LeBron James, or any Oprah Winfrey deciding who gets what, how about all of us come together and make a decision amongst ourselves about what's best, what we should prioritize. And so LeBron James should not be able, out of the goodness of his heart, determine who gets resources and who doesn't get resources. Nor should Jay-Z, nor should some billionaire tech investor, nor should some other media mogul. No individual should be able to determine the course or the priorities for everyone else. Because even if they're good, even if they're noble, even if they are righteous, what do they say about power? And what do they say about absolute power? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so the people said, we would rather struggle, we would rather endure hardships of freedom than the comfort of serfdom. Because the feudal lord says, yes, you're a serf, and yes, I dictate education. Some serfs were very pious and religious, and they would tell their followers, you must attend church services. You must be very, very pious in yourself and very conservative. So if your feudal lord was into the church, then everybody had to be into the church. But if your feudal lord was against the church, he was like, I don't like paying tithes. I don't like this. So you could have a secular fiefdom, and then you'd have a religious fiefdom. But the people didn't get to choose, and you had some religious people who lived in secular fiefdoms and secular people who lived in religious fiefdom, and they didn't have the right to choose. They didn't have the right to move to one to the other. Like, I don't like living under this feudal lord. He's all stuck up and he's into the church. I'm gonna go over here with this rebellious lord and live. No, you didn't have the right to move. So the fact that you were dependent, even if you were dependent and you got something good as a result, I'm dependent on LeBron James to educate my child, and he's doing a good job of it. So even if my child is getting a proper education, the fact that I'm vulnerable and dependent is a problem. Now, even in the United States, in a democratic republic system, the fundamental philosophy of a republic system is that the citizens make the choices, and that no citizen, regardless of how they're born, they wanted to do away with the monarchy. So I don't care if your father was a nobleman or your father was a fisherman. You get no more say over the lives of anyone else than anyone else. That everyone unto themselves had a certain level of autonomy and power and opportunity that no one else would have authority and power over. And that man could be wholly independent of the whims of other men. That was the philosophy. Now we know that the founding fathers were pedophiles, rapists, murderers, enslavers, and no one that anyone should follow or respect. But thankfully, we know that when we follow and we look at certain tenets of the U.S. Constitution, we're not looking at George Washington or Hamilton or Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson. What are we looking at? We're looking at native philosophy. We're looking at the Iroquois Confederacy that they plagiarized. So we don't have to, fortunately, believe that a bunch of corrupt, pedophilic, rapists, mass murdering, genocidal maniacs, enslaving thieves, we don't have to say, hey, how did these men, who in all other aspects of their life, they were brutal and murderous, but in this one thing, in terms of writing about a secular state, because there are some pretty insightful things in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. But now we know the only reason that an enslaver was able to write a document of freedom is he didn't write it. There are no concepts of equality of man in Western society because George Washington and these other men came out of a feudal system, and they came to the United States and set up a feudal system. But the problem was they had to get the masses of the people to rebel. And the only way to get the masses of the people to rebel, because George Washington and the other feudal lords of the American feudal system, they didn't have enough to fight. So they needed the working class and the peasants and the commoners to fight. And the only way to convince the commoners to fight is to promise them, hey, we're not going to repeat the same mistakes of Europe. So if King George comes, he's going to come and continue to make you a serf and a peasant. But if you fight for the United States and the independence of the colonies, then you will be a citizen. And on paper, it looks good, just like most things, like Greta Thunberg. All this stuff looks really good on freaking paper. But in practice, it doesn't play out that way. But that's why Dr. Martin Luther King said he wants the Constitution wants white people to live up to the content of their creed. That's basically saying, I want you to act like in the real world like you do on paper. I want you to act out what's on paper in the real world. The content, the writing, the teachings, the laws of the creed of your Constitution. He said, I want you to live up to the content of your creed. So we don't have to throw away the creed because of their hypocrisy. So the basic idea of anti-monarchism is that no one should be able to amass enough power to have influence over the life of everyone else. No one has that right. And the only people that can govern you are people that you give the privilege of governing you. The people that you elect to office, that you allow to be appointed. And then if they are given the privilege of governing to you, they still have to be accountable, answerable, and vulnerable to you. These are the ideas. So if you're going to have education for your children, and you're going to allow educational professionals, whether it is a principal, whether it is a teacher, whether it is an elected school board, whether it is the department, the Federal Department of Education, theoretically, all of those people are answerable, vulnerable, and directed by the citizens. So when they come up with a policy, they have to make this policy public. They have to put it in the congressional record. They have to publish it and allow for oversight and have hearings. That's the way it was supposed to be governed. But when LeBron James or when some billionaire comes and says, I'm going to set up a school, or I'm going to pay you off, that totally circumvents the democratic system. That totally circumvents the will, the interests, the desires of the people. And it never, ever, ever, ever has played out in the human history. That system has never played out. Benevolent, wealthy, powerful people who will make independent decisions for the masses of the people always ends in absolute tragedy for the people. You should not be celebrating the fact that LeBron James opens a school. You should be outraged at the fact that the citizens, that we cannot use our collective resources to school our own damn children. That we cannot set up a situation where we are the direct administrators over the education. Where the people, LeBron James is not answerable to anyone. And then it is the fact of loyalty and commitment. The whole concept of public education is saying we're giving you a public education for the purpose of serving the public so that you can go off and be skilled, that you can go off and get tools and abilities that will allow you to be a better citizen and to serve the people. But if I say some random billionaire or some multinational corporation is the one who financed and directed and dictated my education, who am I going to serve? The corporation or the people? Who will I feel obligated and any loyalty to? The corporation or the people? And where the blood clot did the corporation, did the billionaires get the freaking money to finance the public? From the public. From the public. Where did Jay-Z get the money? To come to Chicago and says, well, I'm going to bless two not-for-profits. He didn't come, Jay-Z never, and the NFL did not come to Chicago and talk to the grassroots people on the ground and say, hey, what are some of the things, what are your priorities, what are your areas of focus, what initiatives do you have on the ground? They came here and handpicked and dictate to us how they're going to save us from the problems that they profit from and they orchestrate. And again, I'm not mad at the rich people for doing this. I'm mad at the masses of the people for accepting this. For literally celebrating rich people for giving us a fraction of what it belongs to us. All of it should be ours. Nobody's done $1 billion worth of work. No one has done $1 billion worth of work. So if you have $1 billion, you're doing something besides work to get that $1 billion. And you're getting it from somewhere because it didn't start with you. And for a time, black folks always had a certain level of understanding of this. It was innate to us because we were excluded from the upper echelons of U.S. economics. Black people, even Madam C.J. Walker, even our earlier entrepreneurs and early black entrepreneurs always were reminded by the system during the era of segregation and the Jim Crow era. No matter how much money you get, no matter how many fine cars you get, Black Jack Johnson, the heavyweight champion of the world, locked up for driving across state lines with a white woman in the passenger seat. So they were always reminding black people, no matter how much money you get, there's a certain limit. So black people never really got into this worshiping of wealth because we understood that the color line was even more strong and more entrenched than the economic class. But in the post-segregation integration era, in the post-civil rights era, they believed that illusion, that line, that green surpasses black. Even Oprah Winfrey said on national television, the only color that matters now is green. Now, it's not true, but the illusion is much stronger now. So now black people are falling into the European feudal system. And as AI disemploys more people, as they say that economic mobility in the United States is greatly reduced, which means that economic mobility means that you can move up out of the tax bracket you were born into. Now, if you're born poor in the United States, there is almost a 95% chance that you will die poor. If you were born lower middle class, there's an 80+% that you will die middle class, and so on and so on. Also, if you're born rich, you have a high chance of staying rich, not because you're smart, not because you work hard, not because you're even talented, Willow Smith. It's because if you were born rich, the policies of the government, it's got nothing to do with you. Whether you're poor or rich, have almost nothing to do with you. Because of the tax policies and other economic policies, the laws, what is legal and illegal, everything from copyright to trademark law to business licensing and oversight, the loan system, the finance system, all things in this society are set up to keep poor people poor and rich people rich. And then the one or two drug dealer, pimp, hustler, gangsters that can get up there and go from the Marcy Projects to the Louvre will turn around and give us the myth that if I could do it, so could you. When you're only there to perpetuate a myth. And the one thing you have to do, Clarence Thomas even acknowledged this, if you get to the top as a black person, the first thing you have to do is kick over the ladder that got you up there because the white people only have a quota. They have a black quota. So every wealthy black person is vulnerable because the next time the next popular Negro or prominent black comes, they're going to have to displace somebody else. Because the people who control the economy, the people who print the damn money, the people who control the means of production have set limits and quotas. And so we have these concepts now of black excellence. And we're celebrating black folks going to MIT and getting engineering degrees and then going to work for Boeing or Raytheon or going to work for the Pentagon to help white people further entrench their global empire. And we say, yay, yes, queen, black woman becomes a general of the U.S. Marine Corps to go to Africa and to run AFRICOM and to further entrench the military occupation of Africa by U.S. imperial forces. Yes, queen. We got a billionaire. A blood-sucking parasitic billionaire comes and takes a select hand-picked Negroes and they say, hey, I'm going to pay your tuition. And his main goal is not to turn their tuition so they can go out and work for the people because they could do that. If I was a billionaire and I said, I'm going to pay every Negro's tuition, but terms and conditions. You must dedicate 10 years, whether you're a physician, whether you're a philosopher and a political scientist, whatever your degree in. You must commit at least a decade of your work to the advancement of the poor. You must commit your skill and talents to combating police brutality, to combating chronic disease and premature death, to decolonizing and reforestation of Haiti. I'm going to pay the tuition of all black people that study ecology, biology, and you'll be tasked with and to go and to reforestate the Haitian continent. I'm going to pay your engineering debt to go to engineering school. You got to go work on on modernizing the aquifers and the water infrastructure of Harar in Zimbabwe. They could do that, but they don't do that. And these people's like, oh, now that I don't have all this debt, what am I going to do? I'm going to buy a house and be a landlord. I'm going to get a business loan and hire people and be a avaricious, parasitic capitalist. So he's paying off their debt to further bolster the legitimacy of the capitalist system. That ain't benefiting us, y'all. So black people, we should resent anyone who is in a position to dictate, oh, I think black people, because if I became a billionaire tomorrow, I would prioritize veganism. And I would put all my money up to encouraging and imposing veganism. And I would come to black communities and try to displace McDonald's and displace your grocery stores that sell meat and try to set up vegan-only infrastructure and make it as difficult, if not impossible, for you to get meat and dairy products. And I know y'all would riot, but that's what happens, because would I come to the community and say, hey, what does the community want? I could just decide what's best for the community without even consulting and bypassing the community, your elected officials, and all of that. And I know the system is broken. Lord knows. That's all I talk about. The system is broken, right? But then when something doesn't work, you got two choices. You can go in the right direction. When something falls or collapses, it falls left or right. So we're trading a damaged system for an absolutely worse system. Feudal democracy is corrupt. Feudalism is even worse. So we should not be celebrating the emergence of black billionaires and the benevolence of black billionaires. We should be working for the proper distribution and the just and fair distribution of resources. And someone having the power where your school district, your community doesn't have the resources to open a school, but some individual can come and cut a check and open a school in your community, that's not something to celebrate. And so, you don't come build a Nike Shrine school and it's not just LeBron. I'm sorry that I'm harping on that. Because even if someone came today to pay off my son's tuition, I'm not even saying black folks don't take the handout. Don't take the break off. I'm not saying reject it. I'm saying understand the societal conditions and what this is meaning and where this is going. I'm saying that we should be self-governing. I'm saying that we should not have to depend on the kindness of strangers. I'm saying that we should have the power. Power to the people. Remember that from the 60s? All power to the people. And if you want power to the people, you have to give resources to the people. They don't say power to the elite. Nobody, even the elite, don't say that because it doesn't sound right. And let me tell you something else about these elites. If you look back in the 90s and the 80s, and the Joey Greco era, the Wall Street era, greed is good. So the Wall Street people were making all this money. But in the 2000s, the social media era, this is the woke era. So the greedy invested class, because the greedy people basically have to look good. So Bill and Melinda Gates and all these other avaricious, parasitic billionaires, what they're doing is they're doing image control. So they go hire these firms. And they say, well, your corporation is doing all this dirt. And what we're going to do is pair you with this not-for-profit, with this social justice movement to give cover. That's called greenwashing. So Jay-Z says, I want to do this dirty deal with this rape coven, this rape cult called the NFL. And since I'm going to do a dirty deal with this rape cult called the NFL, we're going to throw some social justice draperies on that. And I'll go donate to the Crushers Club or to this other proto-fascist organization that makes little black kids in poor neighborhoods play behind bulletproof glass domes. Prison pipeline. We have a good prison. This is a good prison though, because the bad guys are on the outside of this prison and the good people are. So reverse prisons are the solution to the high crime rates and gangs and misery of the South Side. Reverse prisons, where you put the good people behind the bars and make the bad people free to roam the streets. That's literally the type of shit. Type of activities that Jay-Z's money is going to here. And I don't care about what the elite do because I'm not a member of the elite. I have no interest in becoming the elite. I care about our understanding, our conclusions, and our perceptions of it. Black people, don't be serfs. Be citizens. And not even citizens of the United States, but be citizens of our own nation. Because the nation, remember, the state is the physical place. The nation is in here. Start to behave as citizens, as self-governing, self-driven. Be collectivists. Stop allowing these demagogues, these parasites, and their PR firms, propaganda firms, to come in and trick us into thinking that Jay-Z cares about our interests. That a billionaire paying off a couple of tuition, writing a few tuition, paying off some student loans is actually in the long term a harmful act. Because what it says is it legitimizes the system of putting us in debt. Nobody should have the debt. The debt shouldn't exist. The debt is illegitimate. If you pay a debt, you're legitimizing a debt. So he could put that money to hiring lobbyists to overthrow the system where you cannot count debt into your bankruptcy. He could have put the money to pay the tuition for some and obliterated student debt for everybody. But he likes the fact that he gets to handpick who gets debt and who's out of. I will liberate you from debt. But they're not free from debt, because guess what? They're indebted to the man who paid their tuition. You see those students at Morehouse, they singing this man's praises like he's the second, third, fourth, and fifth coming of Jesus Christ. So you go from having financial debt from having a moral, social, cultural debt. So they're never going to criticize this man. They're never going to stand against this man. They're never going to speak out against this man. And so the Negro factory, the system continues. One thing the rich people have to do, because they're always in such a small minority, there's always the 1%. Since the billionaires represent such a small population, they have to do things to endear the masses to them, or we'll bring out the guillotines. So they take a fraction of their of our money. That was our money. If you got $1 billion, you got the people's money. You got the people's wealth. The money is a representation of work. You didn't do $1 billion worth of work. So you've amassed all of the labor, all of the surplus labor and value extracted from the masses of the people. And then you spit a little bit of it back in our faces, and we're supposed to sing your praises. That is feudalism. I think we have to be mindful of this talented 10th, black excellence, seat at the table, creep on a come up, hustler, baller, capitalist. We are anti-capitalist. Because we are the capital. We have to stop being serfs. We have to stop being human resources. So I know people get mad. This is one of the things I get the most aggressive backlash from. When I speak against and I am critical of some rich benevolent individual or some rich benevolent group or organization coming to do some benevolent thing for us poor suffering masses, paying off college tuition, college debt is hot in the street right now. And some rich person building a school, or some rich, and I guarantee you, I promise you, Serena Williams going to build a little clinic in Africa. I guarantee you that the bulk of her money goes into, and she's profiting from investments. Stop just focusing on how these people got rich. You got to stay rich. If I got $1 billion right now, I don't just put that in a regular bank account. They put that money into what they call sovereign wealth funds. So at the same time you spend $1 million building a clinic in Africa, you make $50 million from investing in the imperial system. And Lordy, thank the Lord she built a clinic. And then she signs a contract with these pharmaceutical companies. And the very pharmaceutical system is a corrupt system, where they have the patents and the trademarks on these medicines and don't allow for generics or for the medicines to be mass produced and mass distributed. So at the same time, you're giving us relief from the very system that is giving us the pain. You're giving us a minor temporary relief. That's serfdom. Resist it all. Say, no, don't give me nothing. I'm going to take. It's mine. I'm taking it back. You don't earn this power. We didn't give you this power. You don't deserve this power. And we're going to take the power back. Power to the people. Resources to the people. I wish the Panthers had put that. All resources to the people. No more serfdom. But I mean, I'm fighting a losing battle here, because every time I turn around, I see more and more people buying into this black feudalism, black serfdom, and making icons and leaders of these blacks who throw a little money around and thinking that is our solution. We need more black billionaires. We need more black CEOs. We need more black people, rich black people, to come back and swoop down and save us, when we got everything we need to save ourselves. We need to take the resources. I ain't saying stay poor. I'm not saying don't accept that money. I'm saying take it. We need to start to mobilize to upend this system, to destroy this system of capitalism. Not to see and beg and extract from capitalism, but do away with capitalism. We need socialism. We need to stop supporting black businesses and start building back cooperative enterprises. Anyway, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. I'm going to have, if you're a member of the African World Coalition, we're going to be meeting. Go to the African World Coalition so we can actually start to fight feudalism and capitalism, even if in blackface. We're meeting tonight. I believe we start at 6:30 at the Zoom online. And I'm going to set up another day as I try to figure out what would be another convenient day for us to meet. I want to start moving up to bi-weekly meetings, because we need to intensify our work, just in case Greta Thunberg doesn't succeed in saving and rescuing us all. We got to come up with some alternative plans. Not that I'm saying Greta Thunberg's going to fail us, but just in case. Q4 Radio, AM 1680. I'll see y'all Friday. I'm going to be talking about submission in relationships, love, submission, and rape culture. So, Fantasia's saying black women are single because they don't submit to men. And I'm saying if submission is the cost of companionship, I say go it alone. But we're going to talk about what this really means and why poor Fantasia, who herself was abused, what is the concept? Where did submission, the notion that women should submit to men, come from, and where is it going, and why should we, and how we should oppose it? Anyway, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. Y'all should be tired of balling. Stop chasing the bag. Stop trying to get that paper. Get that liberation. The real green that matters is the ecology. We need to reforestate the world. We need to de-acidify the oceans. We need to overthrow industrial capitalism and global white domination. We don't need to be celebrating black people who are going to trickle down. When Reagan says trickle down, y'all get mad. But when actual black celebrities do trickle down, y'all celebrate. Let's start making some sense to the world and to each other. Q4 Radio, AM 1680. I'm tired of balling by Tila, because I'm so tired. I'm not balling, but I'm tired of y'all balling. So I'm going to play Tired of Balling, because I'm so tired of balling, y'all. Anyway, I'll see y'all Friday morning. Peace.
Well, today we have a young baller who's going to